I may have stated before, my brain tends to connect seemingly unrelated events or people or things that, in a way that make the world seem way more connected than it actually is. A correlation and causation type of things. I watched a Netflix series called The Toys That Made Us. I really enjoyed the episode on G.I. Joe. It's my favorite one so far. G.I. Joe was my favorite toy line growing up. And most of my fondest childhood memories are somehow tied to G.I. Joe. By the way, Netflix, great job. However, F for excluding Sergeant Slaughter. Not one mention of Sergeant Slaughter in the entire episode. I'm mentally flipping you off right now, Netflix. Leaving out Sergeant Slaughter. Unforgivable. After watching this one, my brain started to run around the 5 W's, the history of Joe. And keep in mind what I'm about to make, all the statements I'm about to make. Purely speculation. I'm in no way in contact with anybody at Hasbro or in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I've never been to Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I don't even know what the area code is. This is what I've experienced or observed. So Hasbro created this toy line. They created the original action figure. They're not dolls, they're action figures. The word doll is not welcome. But the original Joe was the 12-inch figure. It was a complete commercial success in 1964. America's involvement in Vietnam was in 1965. Immediately after they released the Action Soldier, Sailor, Airman, and Marine, they had to backtrack because the Vietnam War became incredibly unpopular. Sales declined as support for the Vietnam War dropped. Hasbro, being a company, an entity which enjoys money, needed to appease their target market and reacted in a way that would keep them on store shelves. They rebranded and relaunched in 1969. Hasbro re-imaged the toy line from, it was America's Mobile Fighting Man, and they rebranded it to be Joe Adventure Teams. So now they distanced themselves from anything that was overtly military. No uniformed military at all. There may have been, headcanon, government funding, but they were not strictly overtly uniformed military. It was action pilot, action mountaineer, action astronaut. So during the 70s, Hasbro attempted to keep the franchise relevant, but sales declined to the point where they had to discontinue in 1978. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. So 1964 to 1978, these were Presidents Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and Jimmy Carter. The perception being that politics affect toys. America was still on a high from the victory of World War II. The Korean War was a bit of a hitch, but not enough to be demoralizing, at least not like Vietnam was. Now, being clear, personal views, to me, this shows a clear line of demoralization. The country and the political landscape devolved from national pride to an existential moral crisis. That was the political landscape from 1964 to 78, or at least into 80, at least into 1980. If the product line was discontinued, a patriotic product line was canceled in 1978. As I have experienced the world in my 36-ish years, Every time a Democrat gets elected to office, we as a country have to be told how much we suck, sometimes for 8 years or longer. When a Republican gets in office, there's usually at least a period where we're told we no longer suck. We don't suck anymore, or we never did, at least in the way that a Democrat tells us we suck. Each time a Republican gets in office, the military gets a pay raise. In 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected. This guy bolstered national pride. He supported the concept that we don't, in fact, suck, that we are exceptional. America can hold its head high again. We're done with that depressing 50 Shades of Brown decade of the 1970s. We're moving on. We're going to be too busy being awesome to be depressed. Due to an oil shortage from previous years, there needed to be a change in design. Plastic was kind of a commodity. In 1982, the line was relaunched in a 3 3/4 inch figure playsets, vehicles, and this nice little background of an ongoing struggle between G.I. Joe and the ruthless terrorist organization Cobra. So it was nice that they relaunched the figures, but it wasn't the 12-inch figures, it was the small ones. So here's some more speculation. So Ronnie was elected. G.I. Joe was relaunched, riding this wave of uber patriotism. They were branded as a real American hero, even though it was sold worldwide. We got 8 straight years of almost hubris-like pride for the nation. It was no longer shameful to be an American, or at least we weren't brow-bashed for waving an American flag on 4th of July. This reflected in our toys, especially in America's least uniformed fighting force. If you notice, there were no standardized uniforms, just a gaggle of camouflage and clothing items to sell more toys. If you look at Chuckles, Chuckles had M82 camouflage, cargo pants, and a Hawaiian shirt. So 88 elections happen. George Bush Sr. gets in office. We're still on that Reagan era high. Things tend to have diminishing returns as GHW's presidency close. The line is getting old. It's a really sweet toy line and highly collectible, but things started to get a little old. In 1990, the Gulf War kicks off, and the franchise kind of got a bit of a power fantasy boost. I personally had 2 storage tubs full of G.I. Joes. About the time Bill Clinton came into office, I noticed a downward trend in the line. This is the point where I started to lose interest in it a bit. In 1992, Hasbro launched the Drug Wars line, the Eco Warriors, Ninja Force, and so on. They had that Star Brigade, the Space Force line. I never saw on store shelves, not once. I don't know where those went. I had some of the awkward line of Play-Doh armored G.I. Joes. Those were kind of strange. I always wondered about those extra side quest mission action figures. I thought the drug trade allowed money laundering to Cobra's daily operations. I thought Cobra was evil. I thought Cobra was evil enough that they were involved in poisoning the environment, but apparently there are entities and organizations more evil than Cobra at the time, and then they went back to being evil and whatever. Video games became popular at the time, and I started to pay attention to other things like X-Men and comic books and, well, let's be honest, girls. It's kind of strange to think of these properties as linked to our political history and foreign policy, but hang on, we're going to connect the dots. Especially when we discuss like the correlation and causation of politics during that uncomfortable September day in 2001. patriotism is an obscure thing. I had to do a little bit of research for the 3 3/4 inch figures. I had no idea that the 3 3/4 inch figure lines never really stopped. The problem that I saw was store shelves. Like I said, this may have been just my own personal experience, but the store shelves, Walmart, Target, before Venture went out of business, Venture, they started kind of tapering off carrying those lines. I don't know if they weren't selling as much, but it was interesting. With the invention of the internet, you can order all the toys you want, but the corporate retailers just replaced it with other things. I don't know if that's an agenda or that was market. I don't know. But in the early 2000s, I noticed store shelves replacing G.I. Joes with other things like Star Wars. The war on terrorism was beginning to lose popularity. And even Toys R Us, the shelves got smaller. Even in my home state, one of the reddest and pro-war state in the Union, or pro-defense, war-based toys were not selling. It was kind of interesting. If they are selling, I don't see it. They tend to be on end caps or a very small section. Star Wars is shrinking. Their space on store shelves is shrinking, and so happened to G.I. Joe. I stopped really caring about the line about the time Savage Joe or G.I. Joe Extreme came around. It got a little silly. So, as far as the 12-inch figures are concerned, production stopped in 2009. There was a 3-figure line in 2013, but that really didn't count because they were inarticulate and immobile. And really, who wants that? Back in 1991, the 12-inch line got a new start with the new chocolate chip desert camouflage. Desert Storm. That line seemed to end in 97 when the Gulf War hype tapered. No amount of George Clooney or Ice Cube movies could keep Gulf War hype going. So 5 years later, in 2002, they got another release. But at that point, G.I. Joe started, the 12-inch figure G.I. Joe started to look like 90s parodies. There were a few straight-to-home DVD movies that were included in playsets and packages. Like I had a Storm Shadow Snake Eyes kit. I think I still have it somewhere. It was strange. And about the time the political landscape changed, so did the toys. President Barack Obama came into office, and America had to hate itself again. Like we had to make America suck again. That was the sentiment I got. Shame on us. Again, speculation. This is how I viewed it. It seemed that he really hated the armed forces. No matter what service branch you were in, it seemed like he really hated us. I served under that time. It seemed like he really didn't like service members too much. The diminishment in national pride did have an effect on toys. There hadn't been a 12-inch figure G.I. Joe since 2013. Joes were almost extinct in every store I visited from California to Oklahoma, and in every store that I went to in North Carolina, 2008 to today. This is purely speculation, but it plays in my head canon. So, in 2016, the new guy's in office. The last 12-inch figure line was a flop. The last successful line was in 2009. What is Hasbro to do? Well, the last line had to die because the new guy at the time said we suck. Agenda being agenda, let's quit. Orange Man gets in office. What do? Well, this new guy has this awesome America First policy that is somehow divisive. How can Hasbro appear to have no ties with the Orange Man and still create a product line that is pro-America? How could Hasbro re-up this line of successful toys but appear to have no ties to the presidency? Well, in current year politics, where any possible link proves guilt in the court of public opinion, no matter how paper thin the argument is, they can't. They can't start a product line. They have to distance themselves from current year politics if they want to make any money later. They had to forego, and the headcanon, purely speculation, it seems as though, perception being reality, that Hasbro had to forego making millions in order to make millions later. Because of Orange Man. Because Orange Man bad. They didn't know what to make of the political circus. And the best course was to just stop production for the time being. That was the safe bet. We've already stopped production in 2009. Let's not start until it's safe enough to start again. Yeah, I've seen the new 6-inch figures. They're not bad. Those look pretty cool. But I want a 12-inch line. I want the full figures like they used to be. Well, not like they used to be. The newer models with the closable hands and posability. Those are really cool. No, with the clothing and the accessories. Yes, like a doll. Shut up. Since I got off active duty, I started collecting again, especially in the past year or so. My goal has been to recreate every Marine Corps uniform issued from 1775. I'm still missing a few. I get to either piece together or make them, or have my wife sew them because I suck at all of that. Tiny stitches and whatnot. Either way, it's not going to be cheap, especially if I go with Hot Toys or some other figure brand. eBay doesn't help. The prices for what I want range from $20 plus shipping and taxes for a naked figure, no accessories, used, to $100 new in box plus shipping and taxes. And most of those are figures I don't even want or need. If I piece together individual accessories, they're about $10 plus shipping and taxes. So thanks eBay. That's awesome. So this is what I have so far. This is a bit of my collection. I'm not completely finished. As I stated, I don't have all the uniforms that the Marine Corps has issued since 1775. But what I do have, at least half, if not, good 80% is attributed to my wife finding secondhand and thrift stores and whatnot. I have read a few rumors about a new 12-inch line starting up, which would be awesome if they started that up again. I would buy them for the individual accessory mission packs. Those mission packs are awesome because you don't have to buy the whole figure. It's just, uniform items and a few weapons. I'd love to give Hasbro my money. It's not a dead franchise yet. It's still going, as far as the smaller figures anyway. If you have to order them directly from Hasbro or pay a ridiculous amount on Amazon or eBay. Either way, I hear good things coming. As the Zen Master stated, we'll see. I need to come up with a new catchphrase. Jeremy from Geeks and Gamers has smash the melee button. Gary from Nerdrotic has if you like what you hear. Blah, blah, blah. I can't think of anything outside of terminate that like button with extreme prejudice. Seems a little hokey. Zero in on that like button. Comment. Leave your opinion. Deuces. It is actually kind of difficult to say yeet that yet button. I don't know.